Welcome to Conversations. I'm Muqtedar Khan, your host, and today I'm going to talk about a very critical issue from a national security perspective. I want to ask the question: is Doge and Donald Trump's attempt to reduce the size of the federal government putting America's national security at risk, especially by doing damage to the Central Intelligence Agency, which plays such an important role in not just protecting American national security, but also pursuing American foreign policy? If you are a critique of America, you could argue that American imperialism depends to a great extent on America's effective intelligence agency and the CIA, etc. All the so-called regime changes that happen overseas, most recently in Bangladesh, are attributed to the activities of the CIA overseas. The most famous, probably one of the most famous ones, are the reversal of democracy in Iran in the 1950s, where the CIA conducted a coup and replaced an elected prime minister with a monarch. We brought monarchy to Iran in the 1950s. So, yes, the CIA is a much maligned, but also much necessary agency. It was instrumental in keeping America ahead of the Soviet Union during the Cold War. And it continues to be. For example, the effectiveness or the early warnings that the Biden administration gave to Ukraine was because of the intelligence that U.S. intelligence agencies were able to gather about Russia's military activities before its invasion. And as you know, currently Donald Trump has stopped intel cooperation with Ukraine, and the panic in Europe and in Ukraine and also some American circles about the critical damage that this not sharing of intelligence with Ukraine can do to Ukraine's battle on the ground and its chances of defending itself. It could become very weak by the time it gets to the negotiation table. So all of that suggests that the CIA plays a very important role. So the question for today's conversation is Donald Trump and Doge doing irreparable damage to this vital American agency? But before we do that, please subscribe to Conversations, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your social political network. So there was an interesting article a couple of days ago in the New York Times, which talked about how the United States government was basically reducing the number of consulates in Western Europe. So as it is, the Lowy Institute, the Australian think tank, has a measure of measuring. It has an instrument by which it measures diplomatic influence and outreach by simply counting the number of embassies and consulates and meetings that a country has. And already China has overtaken the United States. So basically, China has more embassies and consulates in the world, I think 270 plus, and 2 or 3 more than the United States. So this is an important practice, and I will elaborate shortly as to why it is so important. So it appears that right now on the plate, there are several things that are being cut at the State Department. One is number of employees. The State Department has about 80,000 employees. 50,000 of them work overseas in various embassies, about these 271 odd embassies and consulates that the US has overseas. They're all local hires. There is a process by which they can achieve a green card if they work for the US Embassy for, I don't know, maybe 20 years. So they get a chance to become an American citizen after serving the country for so long. So there are about 50,000 employees who work, are foreign citizens who work for US embassies and consulates. Then there are about 15,000 civil servants and roughly that amount of professional diplomats who serve overseas. The civil servants work here in Washington, D.C. So Donald Trump is trying to cut all of this by 20%. And one of the things that they are intending to do is to fire a large number of non-citizens who work in various embassies and also reduce the size of the staff in each embassy and also reduce the number of consulates. So far, they have only identified 12 consulates, which will be cut from the various Western European countries. Apparently, there are very few Americans working there, and of course, there must be a cost for the overhead. I I don't know how much these 12 small consulates are costing the American taxpayer. But one of the panics as a result of this is coming from the CIA because that's the interesting thing about the New York Times article. It very clearly says that um, a lot of CIA agents who are collecting intelligence overseas are basically masquerading as diplomats in embassies and consulates. So the way CIA agents operate is they operate out of the US embassies. In some places, obviously, they may have safe houses which are outside the embassy, but they are mostly attached to the embassy and they are usually disguised, they're undercover as diplomats. I'm very strongly against this particular practice of using diplomats as intelligence agents, as spies, because in moments of crisis, it is quite possible that even though the diplomats do have diplomatic immunity, they can be all suspected of being CIA agents, and that's not good for the diplomats. I don't know whether it reduces their effectiveness or not. So every time you're dealing with the number three, number four, number five person in the embassy who does not have a well-known track record, usually the ambassadors are professional appointees. So you know, okay, he was a businessman, or okay, he was whatever before he came here as ambassador. So, but the rest of the permanent staff, you are constantly suspicious whether they are with the CIA or not. I often, when I'm overseas, we have lunch or dinner with people from US Embassy who come and listen to my talks. And so the host and I are always speculating which one of them is actually the CIA agent. So we automatically assume that all of this. So the fear is that the cutting of staff in all these embassies and consulates will reduce the capacity of the CIA to gather intelligence abroad. The reduction or near elimination of U.S. Agency for Aid, USAID, U.S. Agency for International Development, is also another dent on the CIA and its capacity to basically have people in other countries. So let's say that the US government grants $100 million to New Delhi or to Islamabad or Dhaka to provide some kind of services like provide hygiene services or improve governance or whatever. And they're sending a staff of 4 or 5 staff members of USAID. You can bet 1 or 2 of them are intelligence agencies. They could be from the FBI's counterterrorism cell. They could be from the CIA or even the defense intelligence agencies. So this reduction in embassies has had a collateral damage. You could say the CIA is becoming a collateral damage to the reduction of embassies and the State Department staff. There were reports yesterday in the media that there was a fight between Elon Musk and Marco Rubio in the Oval Office or wherever the cabinet was meeting. And basically, Elon Musk was complaining that the State Department is not doing enough to fire people. And apparently, Rubio shot back by saying that nearly 1,500 State Department people had either resigned or taken the buyout option. And he sarcastically remarked to Musk, should we hire them back so that you can fire them? So anyway, the number is quite staggering. Apparently, in just the last 2 months, that is January and February, 700 people have retired or left the State Department. And overall, in the past few months, 1,500 people have retired from various departments of the State Department. And many of them could be from the CIA. Apparently, even in the CIA, several people have taken the buyout option, the email that said, please take, we'll give you 10 months pay, leave now. Otherwise, you could be laid off in the near future. So that has also happened. And then there was this fiasco where an email was sent from the CIA to the White House on the normal non-secure servers, which means if anybody was reading those messages or hacking those messages, it probably must have been a Gmail account or something. And what has happened was that they sent a list of potential CIA staffers who were going to be laid off. And they use the first name and last initial. And there is a fear that many intelligence officers overseas who are working undercover may have been outed. I suspect the media critical of Donald Trump is exaggerating that part of it, but even if 3 or 4 or 5 CIA agents have been outed by that and they get killed as a result of it, that is quite unlikely, but that could happen. But what most likely to happen is that they have become, I mean, imagine being undercover for 2 years in a particular country and you're trying to gather certain critical intelligence, and now suddenly you have to relocate because your life is in danger because you've been exposed by this uh, basically careless email. So there are lots of things that are happening here in Washington because the Donald Trump's administration is moving so fast and on so many fronts. I mean, they have opened up hundreds of different fronts on the domestic and international, on cultural issues, on legal issues, on economic issues, on environmental and health issues. It is tough to keep track of it, and I wonder how effectively are they going to be governing without making mistakes. They have already made a lot of mistakes. Anyway, coming back to the issue of the CIA, Donald Trump's administration is planning to make the CIA and essentially a human intelligence service and focused on it. There are about several intelligence agencies. There is the CIA, the FBI. The FBI's counterterrorism. The State Department has a Bureau for Intelligence and Research. The Defense Department has an intelligence agency. So there are several intelligence agencies. The State Department also has a diplomatic secret service. Secret Service has its own intelligence bureau. The New York Police Department has a pretty big intelligence department. So there's a lot of intelligence that is gathered by the US. And I'm sure that there's a lot of overlap. So a very smart way you can potentially cut down the size of the government by eliminating redundancies without eliminating the effectiveness of these agencies. But I think retrenching from overseas, cutting down embassies and consulates, and also CIA staff. The question is that will that undermine the United States security situation? Trump is here only for 4 years, which means that once he's gone, unless someone continues to pursue his ideology in terms of a kind of peculiar isolationism, uniquely Trumpian isolationism, which is not fully isolated because he's gung-ho for trade, but from a security point of view, he wants to be isolationist. So a United States with a lesser international security footprint, will it need the kind of intelligence gathering that it does at the moment? Increasingly, over the years, many of US allies have come to rely on the US to collect intelligence. So if you notice with the Five Eyes, for example, Canada apparently has now been kicked out. So there are these English-speaking countries which rely on the United States to share intelligence. Then there are, of course, NATO nations who are relying on the US to share intelligence. The Quad countries are also benefiting from US as a source of intel, not just as intel, but also the electronic surveillance, the satellites, the massive intelligence gathering, drones, etc. So the US has a huge intelligence infrastructure. And it's not just limited to the CIA. The defense intelligence as well as the FBI also have very strong international footprint. But is it possible? This is the question. I don't have the answer. What extent of damage reduction in 20% personnel of the State Department will have on the CIA and its operations? But I can tell you this much, that there is a lot of work that embassies do, the routine work. So if there are lesser number of employees working there, both local as well as from the US, then they will have less people available to pretend to be employees of the staff while they are actually CIA agents going around collecting intelligence. And that you don't have to have spies alone to gather intelligence. Some of the staff members that have locals, what they hear in their communities, what they hear from their colleagues and friends in other departments, is also a great source of intelligence. So the CIA officer who is based in an embassy on a daily basis is interacting with hundreds of local people who work in his own embassy. and they themselves are sources of direct human intelligence. They may have relatives who work for the government. They may have cousins and brothers and sisters and friends who are in critical positions. And so these things become very, very important. Apparently, the deal with the United States made with Libya with regards to its the one of the Libyan's intelligence was involved in downing a particular aircraft, and so there were some negotiations between the U.S. intelligence and the Libyan intelligence, and apparently it it went much more smoothly than expected because the CIA senior staff member who was supposedly working on that particular case had gone to University of Michigan, where his roommate was from Libya, who later on became a senior person in the Libyan intelligence. So sometimes these kind of connections can also lead to diplomatic breakthroughs. So anyway, I just wanted to flag this issue because there are so much is happening in Washington D.C. that it's simply difficult to keep track of what Trump is doing and what the consequences of what he's doing is. He's moving one step forward, one step backwards on the tariffs. We don't even know what's happening with Ukraine. Has he really stopped intelligence sharing with Ukraine, or there's something going on already? Has he already backtracked on it, and so on and so forth? So there is a lot going on. I didn't want this particular piece of information to slip through the cracks because I think it is very important. CIA has been a very important instrument for achieving American foreign policy goals, America's national security. It is an important tool in the toolbox, and denting that particular tool can undermine America's national interests and its ability to execute its foreign policy. So anyway, I'm going to stop with that. Thank you for watching Khanversations. And if you have not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel, like this video, press the bell icon, and don't forget to share this video with your socio-political network. Until next time, I'm your host, Muqtedar Khan. Take care.